Welcome to today's deep dive. We are thrilled to have you joining us.
Yeah, really excited for this one.
Whether you are prepping for a big meeting or catching up on a field of interest, or you are simply someone who just loves to understand the hidden mechanics of everyday life, you are in the exact right place.
Definitely.
Today, we are exploring a truly fascinating collection of source material centered around Alain de Botton's book, The Art of Travel.
It is a phenomenal text. I mean, it completely dismantles the traditional, glossy travel narrative we are usually fed.
Right, the whole Instagram perfect vacation idea.
Exactly. Instead of just offering a list of must-see destinations, it forces us to ask much deeper psychological questions about our actual motivations for leaving home in the first place.
So the mission of this deep dive is to unpack the hidden psychology of why and how we travel. We're going to explore the massive and honestly often hilarious gap between our travel fantasies and the actual reality on the ground.
Oh yeah, the reality is always a bit messier.
It really is. We will look into the strange, almost poetic comfort of lonely service stations. We'll completely redefine what the exotic actually means, and we will examine why those trusty guidebooks you meticulously pack might actually be the very things killing your natural curiosity.
It's a journey that really demands we look inward, interrogating our own minds just as much as the physical landscapes we end up visiting.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I promise you, by the end of this conversation, you're going to have a massive aha moment about why your last carefully planned vacation might have included a completely unexpected, utterly bitter argument over something incredibly trivial.
To get to the root of that, we really have to start with the baggage we inadvertently drag onto the plane with us.
Literal and metaphorical.
Mostly metaphorical.
Huh.
The author shares this deeply relatable anecdote about the seduction of anticipation. Picture the dead of winter in London.
Oh boy.
The skies are just this ominous, unrelenting steel gray. The rain is freezing. And in the midst of this absolute misery, a brightly illustrated brochure arrives in the mail titled Winter Sun.
Perfect timing.
Right. And on the cover is a single perfect palm tree leaning against a pristine turquoise sea.
A completely irresistible image when you're freezing in London.
Absolutely. The author is completely lured in and immediately resolves to book a trip to the island of Barbados. But the psychological trap here is that his entire anticipation of this complex, multi-day journey is built on just 3 static mental images.
Just 3.
Just 3: a beach with a palm tree, a hotel room with white bed linen, and an azure sky. Our anticipation operates as this ruthless instrument of simplification.
What do you mean by an instrument of simplification?
Think about it. When you imagine a tropical getaway or even just a train journey to a new city, your brain actively omits all the boring, uncomfortable parts.
Oh, I see.
You don't imagine the gray, itchy fabric of the train seats or the fly buzzing aggressively against the window.
Or the mild panic about where you placed your passport.
Exactly. Or the sudden realization that you packed the completely wrong shoes. Anticipation compresses time. It cuts away all the tedious, mundane moments, giving the future this vivid, seamless coherence that reality simply never possesses.
But wait, I find it hard to believe that actually sitting on a beach in Barbados doesn't objectively improve your mood compared to a rainy, miserable day in London, even regardless of a few missing details in the fantasy.
That is the logical assumption.
Right.
But reality insists on being included the exact moment he steps off the plane. It wasn't just an azure sky waiting for him. The pristine mental image is immediately diluted by a stew of ordinary facts.
Like what kind of facts?
Well, he sees a massive British petroleum storage facility right near the runway. He notices the frayed rubber mat on the luggage carousel. There's an overflowing ashtray with 2 flies dancing over it.
Not exactly the brochure.
Far from it. A stray dog wandering on a patch of wasteland. And a tiny rubber strap on the taxi's pillar that just says Volkswagen Wolfsburg.
So the environment is instantly cluttered with the mundane.
Yes, but the physical clutter isn't even the main issue here. The absolute climax of this reality check happens a few days into the trip.
Oh, here we go.
The author and his partner take a drive to a stunning colonial restaurant overlooking the sea. They are surrounded by African tulip trees and bougainvillea. It is aesthetic paradise. And they order dessert. 2 creme ramen.
Sounds like the exact fantasy he was promised in the brochure.
It looks like it until the waiter actually brings the desserts. His partner gets a messy, collapsed portion, and he gets a tiny, perfectly formed one.
Oh.
As soon as the waiter leaves, his partner swaps the plates. And suddenly they plunge into a vicious, deeply resentful argument.
Over dessert.
Over dessert. They accuse each other of selfishness. Within moments, this infantile bickering mutates into an airing of their mutual terrors of incompatibility. They drive back to their beautiful hotel in total furious silence.
Oh.
He stands on his veranda, looks at the gorgeous coconut trees, and realizes he cannot enjoy a single second of this aesthetic perfection because he is so deeply enraged.
So what does this all mean? How does a collapsed dessert ruin a literal paradise?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, human moods operate on a very rigid, unforgiving hierarchy. We tend to think that a beautiful landscape will automatically underwrite our joy.
Right. We assume the beach makes us happy.
But our capacity to draw happiness from our environment is entirely dependent on our baseline psychological needs being met first. Specifically, our needs for love, understanding, and respect.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
You cannot enjoy a sumptuous tropical garden if your relationship is suddenly suffused with incomprehension and hostility. The physical body travels across the ocean, but the anxious, melancholic, complex mind travels right alongside it.
We basically drag our inner weather with us. But if the destination is fundamentally flawed simply because we are forced to be there to experience it, should we just never go anywhere?
De Botton actually explores that extreme alternative. He looks at an 1884 novel called A Rebours by J.K. Huysmans.
I'm not familiar with that one.
It features an aristocratic, rather misanthropic character named Duc de Zessant, who decides he desperately wants to travel to London. He packs his trunks, gets dressed up in a traditional Inverness cape, and takes the train to Paris to wait for his connection.
Okay, so he's on his way.
He is, but while waiting in Paris, he goes to an English bookstore to buy a guidebook, and then he dines at an English tavern. He sits there eating oxtail soup, roast beef, and a chunk of Stilton cheese, completely surrounded by English expats.
Getting the full experience before he even leaves.
Exactly. And as the time approaches to actually board the train to London, a profound exhaustion just washes over him. He suddenly realizes that the actual physical journey is just going to involve running for trains, standing in endless lines, hauling luggage, and sleeping in unfamiliar, uncomfortable beds.
He realizes reality is about to completely ruin the fantasy.
Precisely. The actual logistics would completely soil his perfectly curated atmospheric dreams of London. So he makes a radical choice. He pays his bill, takes his bags, and goes straight back home to his villa.
You're kidding.
No, he decides never to travel again, concluding that the imagination is a far superior, much cleaner substitute for the vulgar, exhausting reality of actual experience.
That is an incredibly bleak, if not slightly hilarious way to look at it. But if escaping our own minds is impossible at the destination, maybe that explains why the actual journey, the process of being in transit, often feels so uniquely comforting.
How do you mean?
Well, there are times when I find being in an airport strangely relaxing, even though it's technically a really stressful environment.
That brings us perfectly to the concept of liminal spaces. De Botton spends quite a bit of time exploring the poetry of departures. He describes pulling into a desolate, flat service station overlooking a British motorway at dusk.
So romantic.
Architecturally, it is a miserable building. The lighting is harsh, the food is glutinous, and hanging from the ceiling, dancing in an air vent, is a misshapen, upside-down cardboard box offering free onion rings.
Not exactly the Taj Mahal.
No, yet he finds a profound, almost poetic comfort sitting there with a packet of chocolate and an orange juice. To understand why, we have to look at the psychological weight of our normal environments. The text discusses the 19th century poet Charles Baudelaire, who suffered terribly from what he termed the horror of home.
The horror of home. That sounds intense. What did he mean by that?
For Baudelaire, and for a lot of us really, domesticity can feel like a trap. Your home is filled with your history, your obligations, your unfinished chores, and the expectations of who you are supposed to be.
The laundry piling up in the corner.
Right, it can be suffocating. Baudelaire constantly dreamt of leaving and was deeply drawn to harbors, docks, and train stations because they represent the pure possibility of change. He would write things like, "Carriage, take me with you. Ship, steal me away from here."
So a motorway service station or an airport terminal is a place where you don't have to be anyone. You're just between identities.
Exactly. It's a true liminal space, a threshold between point A and point B. Because you are in transit, the normal rules of your identity are temporarily suspended. You are surrounded by strangers, so you don't have to perform.
I think that perspective shift is never more obvious than when you are on an airplane. The author describes watching a massive 747 descending over the incredibly mundane suburbs of Slough in England. Down below, people are just filling kettles, paying bills, watching TV, But right above them is this enormous machine that, just hours ago, was flying high over the Caspian Sea.
It's a crazy juxtaposition.
When you are actually up in that plane, the altitude forces a philosophical shift in how you view the world.
The physical elevation creates emotional distance.
It really does.
Yeah.
Up high, those clouds outside the window don't look like fluffy cotton like they do from the ground. They look like giant, imposing obelisks made of unsteady shaving foam. And the messy, chaotic world down below suddenly makes total sense.
It organizes the chaos.
Yeah, the roads curve gracefully to avoid hills. The streets resolve into well-planned grids. You see the world from the perspective of a hawk. It ushers in this incredible tranquility because your own petty problems suddenly feel as small as the cars on the highway below.
What's fascinating here is how this sense of isolated tranquility in transit connects to the visual arts, specifically the paintings of the 20th century American artist Edward Hopper.
Oh, I know his work. Nighthawks, right?
Yes, Hopper was heavily inspired by the same feelings Baudelaire wrote about. If you look at Hopper's famous works, like Automat, showing a woman sitting alone in a bright diner with a cup of coffee, or Compartment C, showing a woman reading alone on a train, he is constantly painting these anonymous transient spaces.
His paintings always feature people who seem incredibly lonely, but it never really feels like a tragic loneliness.
That distinction is crucial. Hopper's paintings suggest that these transitional places offer a sanctuary for outsiders, or even just for the parts of ourselves that feel alienated. Giving way to sadness in a bright, anonymous diner, surrounded by other strangers who are also lost in their own thoughts, is often much easier than trying to process that sadness in your own domestic living room.
Because the living room judges you.
Exactly. The living room carries the heavy expectation that you should be happy there. The diner demands nothing of you.
It's kind of shared isolation. And it completely reframes how I think about long train rides. There's an analogy in the source material that really struck me. The idea that the human mind is like a shy animal.
Yes, the mechanics of introspection.
Right. If you sit down at a desk in your home office and force yourself to think directly about a complex personal problem, your mind tends to freeze. The censorious, practical part of your brain shuts down the deep, uncomfortable thoughts.
It puts up walls.
But on a train, the passing landscape acts as a visual metronome. While your eyes are busy following a line of trees or looking into the back gardens of passing houses, the practical part of your brain is distracted. It allows that shy animal of your mind to wander out and actually untangle difficult introspective thoughts.
The physical forward momentum of the train somehow lubricates the mental forward momentum of our thoughts. But eventually the train stops, we arrive, and that brings us to the question of what we are actually seeking when we travel. We often say we are looking for the exotic, but how we define that term is usually quite superficial.
The usual definition is just something foreign. Snake charmers, spice markets, entirely different climates. But the source material completely flips that. De Botton talks about landing at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, and almost immediately he is completely charmed by a brightly lit yellow airport sign directing people to the arrivals hall.
Of all things, an airport sign.
Yeah, he is mesmerized by the clean Frutiger font and the double A in the Dutch word aankomst. To him, this highly functional yellow sign is wildly exotic.
Which forces us to look closer at the true nature of exoticism. The text proposes a much deeper definition. The exotic isn't just about something being colorful or novel. The exotic is anything that is not only new, but that seems to accord more faithfully with our own internal identity and our own unspoken values than our homeland does.
So when he later falls in love with a modest, curtainless apartment building in Amsterdam, it's not because it's flashy. It's because that architecture represents a sort of democratic honesty, order, and simplicity that he feels is missing from the status-obsessed architecture of his own country.
It resonates with who he wants to be.
Right. What we find exotic abroad is often exactly what we hunger for in vain at home.
To really solidify this concept, the author explores the life of the great French writer Gustave Flaubert, who serves as the ultimate historical case study in finding one's true home abroad. Flaubert absolutely despised 19th century French culture.
Why did he hate his own culture so much? France in the 19th century is often romanticized.
He loathed the bourgeoisie. He hated their prudery, their smugness, their obsession with mechanical progress like the railways, and their incredibly rigid sense of social order. It suffocated his authentic self.
He felt trapped.
He actually wrote a satirical catalog called The Dictionary of Received Ideas to mock the hollow things his countrymen blindly believed. Under architects, he wrote, "All idiots. always forget to put staircases in houses.
That's hilarious.
Under railways, he mopped the businessmen who bragged about taking a train to transact business and being back by dinner. He found the entire societal structure unbearably stifling.
So he needed to escape. Where did he go to find his version of the exotic?
At 27, he traveled to Egypt, and it was an absolute revelation. He found his spiritual home. He loved the complete opposite of French order. He reveled in the visual and auditory chaos of the bazaars. He developed an obsession with camels, admiring their stoicism, and would exhaust himself trying to imitate their gargling cries in the desert.
That's quite the departure from polite Parisian society.
But more profoundly than the noise and the camels, he loved the honest duality of life in Egypt. In France, bodily functions and human physical realities were deeply repressed.
Very sanitized.
Right. In Cairo, Flaubert noted sitting in a high-end cafe where simultaneously a donkey was defecating and a man was urinating in the corner, and nobody pretended otherwise. He felt that this culture accepted the totality of the human condition, the beautiful and the grotesque, without the suffocating hypocrisy of the French middle class. He fit in so well he shaved his head, wore local clothes, and earned the nickname Abu Shanab, which translates to father of the mustache.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Flaubert used this experience to develop a philosophy that your native country isn't determined by the biological accident of where you were born. Your native country is the country that makes you dream.
The country that makes you dream. I love that.
We are scattered by the wind at birth onto various bits of land marked by arbitrary borders on a map, but as adults, we possess the imaginative freedom to recreate our identities based on our true affinities.
Identity by affinity rather than by birth? It is a deeply liberating concept for anyone who has always felt like a stranger in their own hometown. You aren't lost, you just haven't found your geographical affinity yet.
But even if we manage to find our affinity, we still usually end up acting like tourists. And that brings us to the final segment of our deep dive, the actual physical chore of sightseeing. There's a scenario described in the text that I think every traveler has felt, but maybe never admitted out loud.
You are referring to the Madrid hotel room.
Yes. The author is in Madrid. It's a beautiful sunny day outside, but he is trapped in his hotel room, completely paralyzed by lethargy. He's sitting on his bed, eating paprika-flavored crisps from the minibar, just staring at his guidebooks.
We've all been there.
And the guidebooks have morphed into these oppressive tyrants, demanding that he go out and marvel at the Plaza Mayor and appreciate the convex facade of a specific 18th century basilica. And the truth is, all he wants to do is stay in bed and maybe catch an early flight home.
This is a textbook case of tourist fatigue. But to understand the root cause of this profound apathy, the text contrasts this modern lethargy with the hypercuriosity of the 18th century explorer Alexander von Humboldt.
Humboldt was legendary. In 1799, he set sail for South America, and his energy was seemingly inexhaustible. The moment he arrived, he began measuring the world. He found a specific cactus and eagerly measured its circumference at exactly 1.54 meters.
So specific.
He took sea temperatures every 2 hours during the voyage. He mapped complex river systems.
This raises an important question. Why was Humboldt practically vibrating with the energy to measure a random cactus, while the modern tourist in Madrid cannot muster the energy to walk a few blocks to see a magnificent 17th century plaza? The difference comes down to the epistemology of curiosity itself, specifically the presence of utility and an audience.
So how did Humboldt's curiosity fundamentally differ from the guy sitting in the hotel room? I mean, they're both traveling to look at new things, aren't they?
They are, but the context is entirely different. When Humboldt measured that cactus, or checked the barometric pressure in the Andes, he was discovering genuinely unknown facts. The scientific community back in Europe had no idea what was there.
It had never been recorded.
Right. His curiosity had immense utility. It was building the literal foundation of scientific knowledge. When he returned, he presented his findings to packed audiences in Paris. He had a burning internal question, and he went to find the answer.
And the modern tourist in Madrid has no internal question.
Exactly. The modern tourist is navigating a city where everything has already been discovered, measured, and cataloged. The guidebook already tells you that the northern edge of the Plaza Mayor is exactly 101 meters and 52 centimeters long. The facts have been gathered.
So there's nothing left to discover.
So for the modern traveler, curiosity stops being a tool for authentic discovery and instead becomes a burdensome obligation. You aren't discovering the basilica, you are just going there to verify that it looks the way the guidebook says it looks.
It turns travel into a homework assignment. You feel this heavy, guilty obligation when you skip a famous museum to just sit in a cafe. You feel like you're failing the assignment, even though the assignment holds absolutely zero meaning for your own personal life.
Hmm.
If you don't have a personal question you're trying to answer, the facts of a new city are just noise.
Precisely. Without intrinsic motivation, the external wonders of the world become a chore to witness.
We have covered some incredibly rich philosophical ground today. For you listening, we've gone on quite the journey. We've seen that travel isn't just about moving your physical body across the globe. It's about navigating the emotional baggage you inevitably bring with you.
The creme caramel argument.
Yes, exactly. We explored why finding yourself in transit spaces like airplanes and service stations offers a unique poetic comfort free from the demands of domesticity. We redefined the exotic as a search for the values missing from your home culture. And finally, we unpacked why following a guidebook can extinguish your natural curiosity by turning discovery into an obligation.
It truly reframes the entire concept of why we step out our front doors.
Yeah.
And if we connect the psychology of travel to our everyday lives, it leaves us with a fascinating final thought to consider.
Lay it on us.
If our mindset is what truly dictates our experience, if the magic of a journey lies in how we look rather than what we are looking at, what would happen if you actively applied the traveler's gaze to your very own neighborhood?
Oh, that's interesting.
If you walked out your door tomorrow and looked at your local grocery store or the bus stop at the end of your street with the hyper-curious, fact-finding lens of Alexander von Humboldt or the romantic, exoticizing eyes of Gustave Flaubert, could you experience the thrill and profound insight of a foreign adventure without ever leaving your own zip code?
That is an incredible challenge.
Yeah.
Turning the mundane into the exotic simply by changing the angle of your own mind.
I love that. Well, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the art of travel.
It has been a pleasure. Keep questioning the world around you.
We will see you next time.